this morning. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, this is going to be a different kind of service today. We're going to start by remembering Garth, our beloved Garth. I'm going to say a few things about Garth, and then I'm going to open it up to you to maybe say a few words with regards to Garth. It could be anything. It could be something that stands out in your memory about him. And so you can be ready to do that if you want to. Of course, nobody's forced to do it. But what I found is there's been a few times when I had to speak about somebody like that, but I let fear conquer me. And then after I left, I regretted that I didn't say anything. And I'm not trying to put pressure on anyone. Actually, this is, I think, cathartic to be able to have a time set aside to think about our beloved brother in the Lord, Garth. Let me get something ready here. I remember when I first met Garth. He's a memorable person. Never met anybody like him. It was in church here. And he came up, and Imogene was there, and he said his name was Garth Griffith. Nice to meet you, Garth. It was within the first minute or two, he told me, he says, you know I'm FBI. And I said, you are? He said, oh, yeah. Fat boy from industry. That should have given me a clue. And there's been so many more like that. Garth is very uncommon. He has something that was very uncommon these days, and that's common sense. He was pragmatic. He was practical. Excuse me. And I've never seen anybody that was wittier than him. It just was a talent. It was just in him. I mean, you could tell me, okay, in a week, we want you to come up with one witticism, one thing that's witty. And I could study, and I could get all for a whole week, I could study, and I couldn't come up with something he does just right off the cuff. You all are nodding and understanding that. But that doesn't mean that he was a shallow person. Garth was a deep thinker. He had a facade of being an old country boy, which he was, but he had a lot of knowledge. And he was a good and faithful servant of the Lord. Faithful. I remember when Carrie's, my wife's father died, we had two funerals. One of them was up in Huntsville. And it was mainly for the family. It was open for anybody to come, but I looked out in the crowd, there was Garth and Imogene. And I thought, what dedication, excuse me, is that? And when we go to we used to, we're not doing it now because of the virus, but we used to go and I would sing a few songs with my guitar and people would come, excuse me, and there was Garth and Imogene. And that's after a church service. They would still go there and just wanting to support us. And I'm just can't, if I told you all the things that come to my mind, we'd be here the rest of the time. I think he's one reason I had donkeys. He had donkeys. And I didn't know that much about donkeys. I would have never gotten them if I knew that they bray all the time. In the middle of the night. And you could hear them for about at least a half a mile or a mile. I mean, if you had a donkey, you know what I'm talking about. So I would go to Garth for relief and what could I do about this and that. And When I finally was able to get rid of them, I didn't have the pens, the stations that you have to corral them. Of course, he would come over there and put that all up for me, and he was just always doing things for people. There's a lot of people out here today, and I understand why it's a crummy day, weather-wise, and there's illness, there's all kind of things. But Garth had impacted so many lives. Anybody he came in contact with, he would impact, and in a favorable way. In fact, the only reason, I won't say the only reason, but Pete and Dot started coming to this church because of Garth. I don't know if you knew that or not. He used to see, he owned that store there in the industry for a long time. And I think before that, or maybe during that time, he would deliver feed to farms out and about, and he would go by and see Dot and Pete. And Dot always had cookies or pie or something like that. Garth said, I really didn't care whether they sold any feed or not, but of course that's how Pete and Dot are. They're tremendous, gracious hosts. But anyway, I think it was along that time-wise, I'm not sure what it was, but he told them about Country Bible Church. I remember, I think Pete and Dot bought a what do you call them, a travel trailer or something like that, or mobile home, and they were going to go around different places and take in doctrine as they went. I think it was along that time when Dot told them about Country Bible Church. And he says, you need to go by there and check that church out because the pastor there was ordained at Baraka Church. Well, that was a plus for him. And they said, I was a good teacher, whatever. And he said, the pastor plays the guitar. And Dot went, what? I hope he didn't tell him it was electric guitar. But anyway, they wound up coming here, and that's how Garth has affected so many lives. You know that because he's affected your life as well. I've got a few PowerPoints up here I want to have. George, can you turn these lights overhead here off? I went through this last night, and it was a treat to find. Go ahead. There you go. Okay. So these are just random pictures that I found. It's not on the board yet, is it? Okay. Do that here. There you go. Now, that's one of the, I don't know what the thing was, but he's coming from getting his food. To me, he looks like a child that was caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And I want you to notice that. That's a fork. He was prepared. This is just random pictures. I think we were going somewhere. Everybody looks happy, don't they? They were. Now this is this is a where is my pointer right here? Okay. Yeah. Look at Garth and Imogene. And of course, this is Charlie. I don't know if you can read it. These are Superman drawers. They love to laugh. There's Garth with a donkey. I don't know the background of this. He got a guitar playing donkey. I hope that doesn't have anything to do with me. Now I want you to look at the face on these two. He looked like he just swallowed the cat, and she's looking like, mm-hmm. That's another one that, unfortunately, I'm in that one, but There's several construction pictures. And, of course, I don't have to say anything. Just look at Garth in each one and you'll understand. Now, he's on this stepladder, and I can remember something to the tune of saying, I don't have to ask why you're doing that, if it would hold him or not. He was going to do some work up there, and he wanted to get on that, and he was testing it out. And of course, I teased him. I said, I don't think it's going to work. Now, this is there's a conversation going on there. Now, Garth has already dug right here, and that's all this way he's got to go. Here's Kent going over there. He's looking down at the hole. He's got his hand on Garth. And I don't know what the conversation was, but you know that it was very interesting. Probably had to do something, is that all you're going to dig? Or do you have that much more? Or are you doing it straight? And you know that there was a retort by Garth, and I think he might have just taken that shovel and tried to give it to Kent. I'm not sure. That's a motley crew there. Here's Garth over here. Now, this is when we were working on the deck. There's three of us right here. He's the supervisor. And I can assure you, he's saying, y'all know what you're doing? I think that's a little off. Now, he was painting, and when I walked by, this is on the deck as well, and I don't know what prompted that. I don't know whether he's trying to paint his nose or if he was just trying to salute or whatever it was. It was something. He always would do something. Now, you know, when I went in there, this is back in the junior class, the new one. I said, Garth, are you praying? He's on his knees. And I think he said something about praying these are going to be the last two he has to paint here. I don't need to say anything about that. This is Garth. This is the baby bed back in the nursery. And he's standing in it. But that wasn't good enough. He had to get in it. By the way, look how beautiful this is. Karen and Sydney did all this painting. It was just, if you haven't seen that, you need to go back there and look at it. It's beautiful. There he is, just taking a rest. That's the next to the last picture. I don't know whether I should show you the last picture or not, because I showed it to Carrie and it made her cry. And I don't know. It's a good way to end this. Now that I said it, you're going to want to know what it is, I guess. But I don't want it to make you cry. It's when you see this, it epitomizes Garth to me. In fact, one of my favorite pictures is on the wall over there one day. And Garth came to work, when we were working on this, and he walked up from his pickup truck. He was wearing Bermuda shorts, cowboy boots, suspenders, and of course his hat, that hat that you see there all the time. And I just cracked up. I never saw anybody with Bermuda shorts, cowboy boots, and suspenders. And he had a way. Anyway, please don't cry. I mean, if you do, that's all right. I'll just show you, because you're going to be wondering what it is. That reminds me of Garth. He's a tremendous person. And the good news is that he is, I was going to Well, I didn't mean to show you that. I just had it on there. This is Keith and Elizabeth when they got married a long time ago. So you can put the lights back on now. I'm so thankful for Garth and thankful that now he's out of the misery and pain and suffering and all the horrible things that go on this earth. He's in heaven now, and the good news, of course, is that it'll just be essentially a blink of an eye and we'll be with him. He's just, it's a very temporary time before we'll see him. So is there anybody out there that would like to say something about Garth? You don't have to come up here. But do we have is this on? I would like to, Craig, will you do the honors here? And please, can you turn it up a little? Hello? Hello? Can you hear it? Yeah. Okay. If you're going to say something, please put it real close to your mouth. Hold it right there, because if you don't and put it down here, they won't hear you. Nobody hear you. Okay.
Well, Garth, he left me a Christmas gift. When, I guess about a year and a half ago, there was a fellow that I worked with, and he's a peer of mine. And he had been struggling with leukemia for like 3 years. And anyway, I knew the guy, and he lived in another state. And at his passing, it wasn't until after he passed that I found out really what a great guy he was. I mean, prior to that, I knew him, and we would talk and visit, but I was so busy living life that I missed the opportunity, the blessing that was there, developing a deeper relationship with him. And it kind of stung, and it was like I prayed about it, and God says, yeah, it happens, but he's a Christian guy, and you'll see him again. Life goes on. You got a life to live. So I do. I live it, and I go. And then, so I come here to this church. It's not a big church, not a lot of people here, but there's a genuine love for each other here, And, God gave me another opportunity to see that he puts gifts in front of me along the way, And that's what he did with Garth. And it wasn't until his passing that I realized I'm really busy living life. Kids are raised now, and we're empty nesters, and we've got life by the throat, trying to, live it, trying to do it. And we come to church on Sundays, and we come Tuesday, Thursday. Garth and Imogene would be here. And honestly, Mike, when I come to church on Sunday, it's not so bad. I can come here, and I'm engaged, and I'm listening, but I bring all this stuff from the world, here, and I'll leave it at the doorstep, and I can come in and I can rest, and I get very relaxed and sleepy. I really do, I don't fall asleep, but on Tuesday, Thursday nights I do. I'm fidgeting, fussing, but I want to come, But anyway, it's a good way to step off and enjoy it, have some peace. But anyway, the gift that Garth left me is he was very unimposing. I'd come here, and I'd be visiting with John and Susan, friends, and I'd see Garth, and he'd look over at me, and he wouldn't want to intrude, but my loss. I didn't seek him out. It's like, wow, because he wanted to engage, say good morning, and I was too busy talking to people, and I couldn't take time to give him a few minutes too. It was my loss, and his too. But anyway, this is another great reminder that we have a real blessing here, and we need to take time to get to know each other better. It's difficult, but anyway, that's all I have.
Anyone? I always loved seeing Garth. He just made you feel so. He was so comfortable in his own skin, so he made you feel like it was just good to be you. He just wanted you to be yourself, and that's a gift in itself. But one of the times that I love to think about when I think about Garth is right before the 2016 election. I was beside myself because I didn't like my choices. And he and I were standing near one another at one of the fellowship functions, and we both had a plate of food. I think we were at the dessert bar. And he asked me how things were going. I said, and I don't know why I shared this with him. I just said, I just don't know who I'm going to vote for. And he goes, sure you do. And I looked at him and I said, no, I really don't. And so he said, why not? And so I, told him everything that was bothering me. And he says, you know who you're going to vote for. And as soon as he said that, it just was so clear to me. And that's just who he is. He was so comfortable being himself, and it made it possible to, I guess he was like a mirror, he was just so, the love of Christ. And he made everything just seem so doable. It didn't seem so overwhelming anymore. Anyway, I always loved it. Whenever he had something to say, you knew you were going to laugh.
I think about those annual reports, financial reports. I don't think he rehearsed in order to do that. But I told people, who likes to stay for a financial report? But Garth was the one that was there. You'd want to be there.
Thank y'all. I just wanted to say that he was a great example, a great husband and father, and a great friend, and he a great deacon. He kept us all in line. He was strictly business, so we're going to definitely miss him.
This might be hard. I've had an opportunity to get really close to Garth and Imogene over the last year and a half or so. The love that they show to everybody is something palpable. It's something that you can feel, and that goes to everybody. I don't know what industry's going to do now. All the little things that he did for everybody, the town's going to fall apart. Who's going to get Mrs. Mark's mail and, keep the town clean. But, he did these little things for everybody. And in that sweet and jovial way that he had, to be able to do that for everyone. That truly was a gift to get to see and to observe on a regular basis how somebody could be that thoughtful and that kind to everybody that he came into contact with, and yet was somebody that you could be just comfortable with all the time. He wasn't self-righteous about all the nice things that he did for people, and in fact he wasn't even going to be the one that would tell you about them. Somebody else would have to tell you that he's going to get Mrs. Mark's mail again. They were just genuine. The genuine kindness that was there, and the love of Christ that shone through was something so that was such an incredible blessing to see, to observe, and to have as an example. And he reminded me a lot of my grandfather. Passed away a few years ago, and so this has been kind of a time for me to relive all of that too. They had the same profession, they were salesmen. They had the same sense of humor. Those little pick and poke little jokes that and that wit that comes through in all of them. And briefest run-on sentence, but anyway, they love their Western movies and all these kinds of things. They're just so similar to one another. I loved seeing that. It was like getting to see Papa Dan. His example is really what we can take to the bank. Seeing, I said this about Pete and Dot, and say this about him too, divine viewpoint in action, in practice. That example was too much.
I think it was very easy to see Garth impersonal love that he had for everybody. And you certainly saw the personal love that he had for his family. When you saw him and his wife together, you saw what God wanted a marriage to be. And it was almost like you could hang around him for 15, 20 minutes and you almost went away with a Bible lesson if you were paying attention. And he was the funniest thing that ever come along. I went over there to his house the Sunday before the election. I meant to go the Sunday before that, and I got here to church and I was listening and I got all about it. So I told him about it. And that Sunday morning, he said, "I will." And so I got about 2 flags from him home the next morning. And then during that next Saturday, they announced the wrong winner part of it. And when I came to church that Sunday morning, he come shooting out around over here, and he said, "I guess you heard the news." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, you want your money back?" I said, "No, sir, I sure do." I just thought that I laughed for 2 days when he told me that. I know I learned when my dad died in 2008, I thought that I understood how to doctrinally apply death in my life. And I figured out pretty quick I didn't know it as good as I thought it did. Because his came quick. You know, he was doing fine 1 minute and he was gone. And Pastor Mike did the funeral. If he hadn't, I think I needed to hear it. All the doctrine that he taught during that. And I truly understood it and had a comforting part in me that knew I was going to see my daddy. And I've had several people that I've known and been close to that's passed away since then. And it's comforting to know that when we get there, we're going to hear them jokes again. And you're going to see him. And I believe that when Jesus came back, when they saw him, they knew who he was. You're going to be able to tell who, in their resurrection body, we're going to be able to we'll know who he is. And I think that's just awesome. It ain't over with. We got to keep. If he could tell us something right now, he'd say, "You dig in what Pastor Mike teaches. Keep learning. I'll see you when you get here." And I believe that.
I'd like to say a few words. Back when my parents and I first started coming to church here, right at 20 years ago, it wasn't long after we started coming that Garth and Gene invited my parents over to the industry for their house for a party. And they went and had a good time. And Pastor Mike was there and Mary Charlotte. that sticks out to me because my dad talked about that longest time. He used to enjoy being with God too. And another thing I like to point out is the dedication that Garth had with his church. The last time I talked to him was on Friday around noon. All the insurance on church and done with that. So he called me and he already knew he had the virus and said he was feeling better that day, but the day before he really had a bad case of flu. But anyway, that was right before we went to the hospital. He was still thinking about us here. We're going to miss him, but he's in a better place.
Well, I haven't been coming that long to this church, a little over a year now, but Garth, he would always, every time I'd come on Sundays, he would just say hello, good morning. We had this little chit talk, and he just made you feel like at home, just so friendly and all, and just, he dearly gonna be missed. I sure gonna miss him. It sure was a shock, but I know he's in a good place, and someday we're gonna be able to talk again and get to know one another still better. Like I said, I sure gonna miss him.
I think what struck me about Garth was his humility and just that he always had time. I would call him about financial stuff, and I'd say it's a good time, and it was always a good time. I mean, I know he was busy. I know he was really busy, but he would always drop everything and address whatever it was that I needed to talk about. And if I called and he missed my call, he'd call me right back. Sometimes when I was leaving a message, and I would tend to be like straight to business, but he would always remind me of how's your family, how's Lance, how the girls, and just remind me what's most important. He had always had people on his mind, and I just think his lightheartedness had to do with his faith in action. I think he had a right perspective on life, no matter what was going on in our country, or he had faith in action, and it was a really big testimony to me. But his humility and putting others first is really stuck.
There's a couple other things that came to my mind while y'all were giving your memories about Garth. And I know there's some of you out there that want to say something about Garth, but you can't because you got a frog in your throat. I know what that's like. When I decided to make Garth the chairman of the deacons, he said, I just don't know if I can do that. He didn't seem to have the confidence because he was so humble. And I said, well, Garth, I'm the one that has to have the confidence in you. That's why I'm asking you. And he did a great job. I mean, he's so grounded. And one thing I like about Garth is that you always knew where you stood with him. There's some people you don't know if they're hiding some kind of animosity or something's wrong. Isn't it great to know people who you don't have to worry about that? If something's wrong, you're going to know it. He will tell you. And I think one reason that he had that flag business wasn't really to sell flags. He didn't need to sell flags. But he was a people person, and he wanted people to come in there and visit with him. And he had booklets, mine and I think some of the colonel's booklets, right there with the flags. And sometimes he'd ask me, could I get that in print? Because he doesn't have a computer or anything, he couldn't get it. And he said, all I need is one copy, I'll make some more copies. And all there where the literature for the flags were, and were booklets, just to get them going on, get the ball rolling with regards to the spiritual matters. And if they weren't saved, then he would address that as well. So I don't want to forget to tell you that the graveside service is tomorrow. Is it 2:30? 2:30, and it's right close to their house. But if you'd like to go and you don't have directions, Morgan, would you be the one to talk to? Okay. There was an email that had directions on it. Yeah, I Googled it and I saw it, and you can get a shot to look right down on it and see where it is. It's not hard to find. But if you need directions, please don't say, well, I guess I can't go because I don't have directions. We'll get you directions. I know where it is. I haven't been there, but I Googled it. And I think there's an address. So if you have an address and you know how to Google a location, they'll have a map there for you. But it's really easy. It's kind of hard to get lost in the industry anyway. It's not a metropolitan area. So we've got about, 10 minutes left. And I was meditating on and trying to think about something I want to do. I can't do it all in 10 minutes. I have something to address that, that's wrong. Didn't mean to do that. I'm trying to get over here to notes. I wanted to address an issue that I think is really pressing and really important. And I thought about how important it was to do it, but then I thought, this probably isn't the right time to do it, because for one thing, we're still in mourning for Garth. It's Christmas time, and I thought, I'll just put it off and address this at another time. But the problem with that are things are happening so quickly now in the state of our country that I'm afraid if I don't bring it up and say something at least this morning, it'll be too late, because there are monumental things that are happening that can and will change this country as far as we know it. I think that this Supreme Court decision is on the same plane as Pearl Harbor, the impact that it will have. 9/11, the impact that had. Well, this decision was made on 12/11. And it is, the impact is so great that we no longer have a nation of laws. It's the states, like Texas and about 18 or 19 other states, filing suit against 4 states that blatantly disregarded the Constitution. And that's what the Supreme Court is for, is when you have states at odds with one another, you take it to the Supreme Court. That way you can mediate it without bloodshed. And the fact that they didn't take it is that's what they're for. And now they've thrown it back to where, from this point on, unless something is done, and that something done would be using force, every election will be like this one, if not worse, because they have the message now that we can do this and not be held accountable. And there are, I heard, for instance, what's the guy that's, his name is West, Alan West? He's, I think, the head of the Republican Party in Texas. And he said, Texas alleged Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania exploited the coronavirus pandemic to justify unlawfully enacting last-minute changes and ignoring both the federal and state election laws, thus skewing the results of the 2020 general election. Alan West, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, said in a statement in response to the denial that the Supreme Court has, he says, and this is a quote, decreed that a state can take unconstitutional actions and violate its own election law now. And that's what that suit was for, is to hold them accountable. And it was, obviously, it was not, there was no, it's so blatant that it on its face showed that they did it. It's not a question of whether they did it or not. They did it. And for 7 of those justices to say, we're not going to take it because they don't have standing. Texas doesn't have standing. Well, where else can Texas go? That is the only place to seek a remedy. That's what the Supreme Court is for. And so I have contempt for these justices, and I don't know why they did it, but I think, let me read this last paragraph of what Alan West said. This decision will have far-reaching ramifications for the future of our constitutional republic. Perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution. He's talking about secession. Rush Limbaugh has been saying for over a week that that is a possible remedy for states who are still trying to abide by the Constitution. And then there are others that would say that, why should we secede? We're the ones that are doing it right. And there is, let's see, I have one paragraph here. I just have a little time, but I'll go through a couple of points here. And actually, they're questions. The question now is, will our president abide by his oath of office and defend the Constitution and our country against enemies, foreign and domestic, and utilize the few options he has left? Will he use the military to stop the tyranny that is trying to take over our country? Will the 74 million, actually many more million than that, who voted for President Trump and freedom support him? If our president concedes, if he doesn't do anything, are there enough freedom-loving patriots who have the courage and will to resist the dastardly and illegitimate government that will assume power, or will they do nothing and become enslaved? That's the choice. Doing nothing is going to end up having mandatory vaccine injections, confiscation of guns. And you know that the way that our first our first war for independence was Pastor Jonas Clark with the Christian men on Lexington Green, who stood in the front of these British troops who came to disarm them. Should they have done nothing to stop the soldiers from taking their only means of defense against tyranny? If Christians don't take a stand for righteousness and justice, who will? What would unbelievers think of Christians if they dropped the struggle for freedom entirely on their soldiers? More importantly, what would God think of them? The battle cry of Americans' war for independence was resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. God has given all mankind the right of self-defense. I have several notes I don't have time to go over, which is the state of affairs now. Hundreds of thousands have lost their businesses, their freedoms, and their hope. 7 unelected Supreme Court justices has put the last nail in the coffin with regards to being able to have a peaceful resolution to the Democrats stealing the election. And there is a mountain of evidence that they did. There is no question. And yet the Supreme Court would not even hear or look at the evidence. See if you recognize this. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, it is their right of the people to alter or to abolish it. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. This was the document that birthed our nation. Those people didn't want to have to go through it, but they had to make a decision. Are we going to allow ourselves to be enslaved, or are we going to fight for freedom? I like to think of myself, and maybe it's too high an honor, but I like to think of myself as a modern Black Robe Regiment. It was the pastors at that time who prepared the people for what was coming, biblically and logistically. And that's what I'm trying to do for my beloved flock, is we have to face reality, even if it comes at a bad time. We can't pretend that it hasn't happened. Our government has, all 3 branches has acquired massive corruption within them. You can't get justice in the courts anymore. You couldn't for a long time, but now it's for sure with this decision. So the question might be, what can we do? Number 1, every one of you know what number 1 is. You want to say it? Pray. Right. That is our weapon. Our number 1 weapon is to pray. Because whatever happens is going to depend to a large degree on Christians striving to reach spiritual maturity by taking in God's Word. They are a royal family and they think different than others. The second thing is to stay informed. And I hope you're not watching mainstream media. They are utterly corrupt. They lie and know that they're lying. They hide the truth. I don't know how they can stay out of prison. It seems like somehow they have to be held accountable for doing that. It seems like that would have to be a crime. But we need to stay informed. Thirdly, we need to prepare food, water, medicine, and weapons Now, I know there are some people think, oh, what is he talking about? That can't happen to us. It is happening to us. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Doing nothing means this. Mandatory vaccine injections, confiscation of guns, I said that. Reparations. Shirley Jackson Lee in Houston has already been tapped for the head of the giving reparations to the black folks. Christian persecution, churches shut down, breadlines, open borders, reparations. Reparations here means, that's really not the word I wanted. It's retaliation is what I meant to put there. They're already talking about how they're going to retaliate against our president and his family, which could wind up prison for him and his family, or maybe even death. And they're coming after those who supported him as well. They're already talking about that. Death of our oil industry, global warming, globalism, single payer health care, constant surveillance, freedoms destroyed, and I could go on and on and on. And I believe at this point that because of that hideous decision of the cowards that didn't do their job and make a decision based on the evidence, they didn't even look at the evidence, that there now it will be a issue of force. I don't know how it will pan out. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm trying for all of us. I'm trying to prepare you, mentally mainly, to see what can happen, and it can happen very quickly. I'm talking about in the next week or two. There are things that can be earth-shaking for us. And we need to be calm, we need to be deliberate, we need to pray, and we need to decide, is freedom worth fighting for? Is freedom worth dying for? There has been untold numbers of people in this country that have suffered and given their lives for freedom. And they'll act like, oh, this is all conspiracy theory. This is all nonsense. But if you have been keeping up what's been going on, you know this is imminent. And there will be some who will attack me. I'm not saying you personally here, but somebody will hear this and say, what he's saying has no place in the church. Where else would it be? We want to be good and faithful servants. We want to stand for justice and righteousness. And the hour is now. The things are going to come upon us and force us to make decisions. I, for one, am not going to roll over and become a slave. And I believe that's what is happening. There may be people out there, maybe even you, might disagree with me, but I want you to know what my thoughts are. My job is to prepare you for anything that you need to know. And I'm trying to have us all face reality. We're not to panic. We're not to go off the deep end or anything like that. Secession may be the thing that will happen if they take our government. If we allow them to do it, if our president allows them to do it, then our options get even worse. I hate to end on that note, but it doesn't have to end on a bad note. The good note is that Jesus Christ is in control of all this. He can spare our country, or we might have to go through persecution. It's already been happening if you've been paying attention. People in these states that are not attending church because a governor or a mayor who has no authority, zero authority to do it, they may say, well, we have a statute over here, blah, blah, blah. I hope you all understand. Article 6 of the Constitution, paragraph 2, says the Constitution of the United States of America and the laws made pursuant thereof are the supreme law of the land. I believe that trumps statutes, doesn't it? It trumps anything. I've had people who say, tried to talk me into getting a permit to carry a gun. I said, why do I need that for? I've got the Second Amendment. And that came from God. He's the one that gave me the right to keep and bear arms, and to speak freely, and to worship according to my conscience, and to assemble, and freedom of the press. All these things, God gave us these things. And they're in critical danger of being lost, and quickly. Yes, Scott. They need to hear you.
How close do you think we are with this happening to the United States of America losing our client nation status?
Well, we can't hardly have a client nation status if we're no longer a nation. Look, I wrote this book right here, Tolerating Tyranny. I think it was written, I knew that it was, I thought it was really pertinent then. It is really pertinent now. And I challenge every one of you to go on to our website. This is on our website, word for word. You can go into the table of contents and whatever questions you have, address it. And that's what, are we going to tolerate tyranny? Or are we going to give up and let our nation be gone? Because that's what it's like as our nation. These are my opinions. And you might differ with those opinions. That's fine. You can differ, but it's not going to change the facts that exist now and what is going to happen if we don't have the courage and the will to save our country, because that's what's at stake. Well, I'm way past time now. Did anybody else have a question or anything? Okay, let's close. Heavenly Father, you are our God. You created us. You sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to the cross to save us. We are your children. The times are desperate. But we should not fear. Whatever comes, you will never leave us and you will never forsake us. We have your promises. And we pray that you will give us discernment and wisdom with the decisions that we make. And most of all, the thing that we don't want to do is to make decisions on the basis of fear. That's the last thing that we want to do. We need to help each other. We need to continue keeping on taking in your word, trusting in you. Faith rests no matter what happens. And leave the rest to you. You're the one that's going to decide. You have the authority and you will do it. You'll decide. And our job is to be joy and have joy in every circumstance and to praise you. Because our relationship with you and your plan is much bigger than what happens to the United States. But we want to be part of your plan. And we don't want to be afraid to tell others about you, about your plan, where we stand, and that we are patriots. That's our prayer, is that you will guide us and give us direction and help us to have the courage and the will to be standing for truth and righteousness in an exceedingly wicked world. And we know that you will do that, and we thank you for it. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
But